Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time for Crypto Globe, where we take a trip around the world to hear about the latest developments in the industry. To guide us on that tour is Ethan Pierce, director of the Paris-based Crypto Assets Institute. Today we have a mix of crypto stories from the 3 continents. Ethan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
All right, well, let's jump right in. China, recently announced the central digital currency is close to launching. What's your take on that?
So yeah, we talked about a little bit last week that it seems that China is softening its stance on crypto, at least as an asset, as property. And it would appear that continuing along those lines, especially with the Facebook Libra discussion and other thoughts, that they are now starting to get much closer. Supposedly it's been about 5 years they've been working on this, but now they're saying that they are practically ready to launch a central bank cryptocurrency, so the People's Bank of China. The thing that sounds interesting about it is they say that blockchain might not be the only technology layer or the only way that the currency itself is handled. So there's some questions about whether or not it's truly going to be a cryptocurrency as we know it, or what that will look like. I think, we've had a lot of discussion with Facebook Libra about the fact that it's centralized, that eventually it would be decentralized, given what they've said they want to do with it. It looks pretty clear that anything that will come out of the People's Bank of China will be a very centralized currency. Whether or not that's actually a cryptocurrency as we know it is kind of left to be seen. But we'll see. But at least they're saying it's coming soon. Coming soon, we don't really know. But usually, this might also just be kind of a parry in the whole economic trade war that we have going on. That they want to kind of throw out there the fact that they potentially could go crypto to deal with some of the issues around the yuan. But at this point, it's just we're just getting what they're saying. But they're at least making noise that they're not far from launching.
Mm-hmm. Is there any news yet or reports about whether this will be tradable on crypto markets and platforms, or is this a purely internal currency?
At this point, it's just speculation because they've been very tight-lipped about what they want it to look like, especially now that they're saying that might not be completely blockchain. I would expect that people will find ways to peg to it, but it'll probably be more in along the stablecoin idea of it being something that's controlled. Strongly controlled by the central bank. Whether or not that is tradable outside of China will be up for grabs to see how that looks. I think it's more probably the idea of wanting the benefits of what crypto can bring to an economy, but probably as controlled or even more controlled than the yuan.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, switching gears a little bit, Norwegian Air has announced that's launching a crypto exchange and payments. This doesn't get crypto to the moon, but does it get crypto to the sky?
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty interesting thing. So I think it was last year, the year before, the founder and CEO of the airline kind of stepped aside, became chairman, and his son took over. And part of that was to bring in a lot more of a kind of a youthful perspective. Most of these discount airlines like WOW have failed, and so Norwegian is the one that's still doing well, but is profitability is a concern for it. So part of this idea was, what can we do to be different and modern? And so along those lines, they're looking at how to address transaction fees. And so, like any business, you're dealing with 1%, 2%, 3% whenever you have a transaction with Visa or MasterCard. And so if you can save that potentially, if your margin is already that low, can be a very important deal. So what they looked at, they're building their own crypto exchange, and that should launch next month. The reason is there was not specifically one in the region that they felt like they wanted to use, and this allows them to kind of have some control over the technology stack if they start to build more crypto solutions. But the idea for them is basically that one of the things that I found that you do, transaction fees are one thing with crypto, with credit cards, but what it turns out with the airlines is whenever you have a return payment on a credit card, you have your chargeback fees. That's one thing. Well, it turns out because of the risk of these airlines failing, they're actually withholding a tremendous amount of the transaction revenue as a guarantee. And so that's actually penalizing the airline significantly in terms of revenue. So this they're actually looking at as a liquidity play. If they move into crypto and they can get people to be using crypto for payments, for reservations, then they actually, not only do they save money on the fees, they actually are getting all of their revenue right away instead of having a certain block of it held by the credit card companies.
So they kind of looked around, didn't see an exchange they liked, and said, hey, if you want something done right, do it yourself, and that led them to launch the exchange. I guess the extra, the extra revenue coming from just that exchange, running doesn't hurt. Will this be seen as a legitimate exchange? Will this be an exchange that is someone who doesn't deal with the airline, who's just looking for a crypto exchange in that geographical region? Will this be an exchange that someone could actually, legitimately use?
According to what they're saying, this will have it will have other currencies and assets in terms of tradability. So it should be a real exchange in that sense. It seems to be the way they're approaching it. What I'm guessing is that they are using this as the idea of transactions and chargebacks this is part of the solution they're looking for the airline. Probably also looking for a way to diversify their activities a little bit, and they probably have other ideas in the pipeline that they want to be working with. So the exchange is the first of those. I'd expect it to be its own revenue model, and potentially looking for other ways to move into blockchain and crypto around travel, around their core business, but potentially not linked directly to payments for flights.
I mean, definitely interesting. It's an airline, with crypto, definitely with the cross-border payments, with the exchanging of rates and fees, definitely an interesting development. Well, next up, going to the other side, we have New Zealand announcing the legalization of salaries being allowed to be paid in cryptocurrencies. What's the news here?
So yeah, this is pretty interesting. So New Zealand, like we saw with China last week, where they have legally recognized crypto as an asset, as property, but not looking at it technically as tender in terms of money, as a currency. You can't pay people salary in something that is not considered a currency, because you have to pay taxes. Potentially, New Zealand, like the U.S., is a pay-as-you-go income tax. So when you're paid, you receive your salary. You also are paying your tax at the same time. So that needs to be a taxable situation as a currency, not necessarily just as properties and assets. So that was kind of the block. What they've looked at is they said, we have demand in order for people to be paid in crypto. We also see this as an important potential economic development, so we want to move forward in that. We still are only recognizing crypto as property, but what we want to do is we want to create this opportunity. So what they've said is, if the crypto is a currency, so it part of what's built into the tokenomics of the crypto itself is that it's being used, or that its functionality is as payment, then that can be acceptable to pay people in crypto for their salary. Then the next piece is, when you pay them, there can't have any kind of lockup. So if somebody builds their own token or coin in New Zealand and wants to use this and is doing it as a currency, that's fine. But if for some reason it can't be, it needs to really be paid as currency and not as an asset. So no way that you're speculating on that or holding it because you're forced to with some kind of a lockup or something else. And so that's what's creating the opportunity for it. What's interesting is this is going to be only for salary or wage type employees. So self-employed people cannot, for the time being, be paid in crypto. Haven't really said exactly why, but I think they're probably trying to do that to get around people who are playing in the crypto world, kind of using that as a way to get around maybe capital gains issues by paying themselves salary versus just as an asset itself. But for the time being, that's it. And it has to be a regular thing, meaning that if you're going to take 50% of your salary every month in crypto, then you have to take it every month. You can't just say, next month I'd like to have my salary in Bitcoin, but this month I want it in cash. So a few rules they've thrown in, but this goes into play September 1st. So you'll be able to start getting paid in crypto. Interesting.
Now, you mentioned how New Zealand until now has been treating crypto as property, and now they're allowing, they're viewing it when paid in salary, viewed as a currency. Does that change the taxation framework and how New Zealand legally views it? Is they now shifting all crypto from property to currency?
So according to what they said in their statement for this, they're not actually redefining crypto as currency. They're simply stating that in this particular instance, because people are being paid a salary, if we provide them with a unit of value that is in itself considered a currency and does not have any speculative, aspects or whatever, then in that tight instance, we're going to let it be called a currency. But they're not actually, at this point, expanding that outward to crypto as a currency in New Zealand. They're still considering that as an asset at this point.
But for the salary, will be taxed as a currency, not as a property for the salary.
Exactly. So, and it's taxed as you go, so like the U.S., so you'll get paid, whatever you get paid, you pay your income tax at that moment as well. So that's why this has to be a legal decision. Otherwise, your company could potentially pay you in crypto, but you would run into issues where you were being given an asset, and so any of the taxation that comes with that, if there's capital gains or whatever, would come into play. For this instance, they're considering it currency so that income tax can be applied at that moment, but they're not expanding that to if you have business activities in crypto, that those specifically would then be income tax based. They'll still be considered an asset with any of the taxation that goes with them.
All right, well, shifting over to the UK, investment app Robinhood has officially won a license to operate in the UK. What's your thoughts on that?
So we saw a couple weeks ago that Robinhood, which just raised 323 million Series E funding, so it's huge. They've been pushing more and more into crypto. So they're already, pretty much the largest digital stock and ETF broker in the U.S. They're available in 30 plus states now for crypto as well. As they go state by state with the FES. So that's moving forward really well. So what they just did, they were just awarded finally a license as a broker in the UK. So they can now start doing all of those activities in the United Kingdom, which allows them to start to escape the US market where they've scaled significantly and huge, but this allows them to start to go international. So not much more information than that in terms of what this will allow them to do specifically, but it seems it's a normal brokerage license which will allow them to do all of their existing activities, including crypto, in the UK. And then I would imagine that they would use that as a foothold into Europe, but with Brexit issues, I'm not sure how much they'll be able to push that yet. But at least it's very interesting to see a really large fintech player in finance that has built a significant revenue model in the US be able to expand, especially with a very active and growing crypto segment to the revenue, be able to expand outside the U.S. into another kind of regulated environment like the UK and see where that goes. So kind of a continuation of the story on Robinhood, but they're definitely scaling fast and playing big into the crypto world, it looks like, for the coming months and year.
Do you see the timing as a mere coincidence, or do you view that they're really making this push in the lead up to Brexit, possibly playing off, the FUD that could drive a lot of market uncertainty, and this was a strategic move to launch now?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. You don't get licenses like this overnight, so this is obviously something that they've been working on for quite a while. Regardless of where Brexit goes, the UK will remain an incredibly important financial market. So this is still a very significant play for Robinhood in terms of financial services to be an active and potentially the leading player in the UK market. I would also expect that with the 323 million that they just raised, that part of that scale was obviously international growth, and this had to be a part of what they were pitching in terms of fundraising, that we're already very soon going to have a foothold into the UK. That's going to change the way we operate because now we'll be in another significantly regulated environment. And from there, we'll just leapfrog into other environments and see where we go. At this point, I doubt that it will have an impact on how they approach Europe. And in any case, they will probably go country by country in terms of their approach, just in terms of country growth. So they could have an EU compliance, but they will probably be focusing on really hitting specific markets and the way that those markets focus on investment and financial services. So if they want to do France, if they want to do Germany, then that's going to be an individual market attack and not just a European play. So it makes sense that they would start in the UK, which is already such a significant market. And most likely that will branch them into the EU at some point, but probably not in a linked way, given all the uncertainty around Brexit.
Mm-hmm. All right, bold move by Robinhood to possibly expand internationally, starting off with the UK. Ethan Pierce, thank you so much for joining us here at BLOCKTV. For all our viewers, that was Crypto Globe, and make sure to stay tuned at blocktv.com.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.